You probably hear this conversation. I'm so sorry and I apologize for this unpleasant experience. Because of this, we would like to upgrade your room to a suite. I remember hearing this for the first time. I was like, suite? This is a suite, right? What the person meant is actually suite. S-U-I-T-E is pronounced as suite. It got me thinking, right? It's so important to be able to pronounce the correct pronunciation for the word. Or not, it totally means different things. As a friend or as a colleague, I think it's important to actually share with them the correct way of how to pronounce it so that they don't embarrass themselves in the lobby or when speaking to customers or communicating to someone important. And because this reflects the entire brand and experience of the hotel. Hello, my name is Adrian and welcome to the Vision Impossible podcast where we talk about everything relating to hospitality. This week, I want to share with you a little story about my ex-girlfriend. So, long time ago when I was dating my ex-girlfriend, what happened was that, we always spend time watching movies. We didn't have Netflix back then. It was just, we had to go and get DVDs. By the way, original DVDs, they are not pirated DVDs. And while we were selecting what show to watch, we came across this DVD, right? And in front of this DVD, it spelled out the word C-H-A-O-S. So I said, oh, okay, this looks like a good movie, right? Because it's called Chaos. And she said, no, it's pronounced as Chaos. I was like, no, it's not Chaos, it's Chaos. And she insisted, said, no, C-H-A-O-S means Chaos. I said, no, it's not Chaos, it's Chaos. There, you see the word C, Chaos. She insisted and she just stomped her feet out. But anyway, we bought the DVD and we watched. It was a great movie. So since then, right, I kind of always remembered that sometimes people mispronounce certain words, right? It's so important to be able to pronounce the correct tone or the correct pronunciation for the correct word. And recently I was talking to my daughter, and while talking to her, she said, Daddy, can I ask you a question? Why is this country and this country having wow? I was like, what's wow? And she said, wow, they're fighting. They're having a wow. I was like, I think you meant war? She said, no, it's wow. And when I tried to correct her, right, she was obviously a bit upset about it. She didn't like it because I corrected her. But it got me thinking, right, it's so important to be able to pronounce the correct pronunciation for the word. Or not, it totally means different things. War means fighting. Wow means like wow. So when you pronounce it differently, it totally means different things. So I was thinking maybe I would just compile like some of those popular words that are used in the hotel industry that people sort of kind of mispronounce it all the time. And I have this as number one, right? When I think about it, it's really, really funny because I was actually going for a roadshow. I was in the sales department, and when you go for a roadshow, you always need to print pictures of the hotel. So you can actually put it up into the, you have a booth. You can display some of the pictures of your hotel. And obviously, you want to display the best pictures. And my boss back then asked me to go and get some pictures of the hotel printed and make sure it looked nice so we can bring it for a roadshow. And while he was selecting the photos, he went through, usually there's a label there, right? Room picture, bathroom one, lobby, corridor, restaurants, ballroom, function hall. And when he saw one picture, he was so angry, He said, I told you, right? I need this picture of the Facade. Why didn't you get this picture of the Facade? I was like, what's a Facade? I didn't ask that question. I just paused for a moment. I was like, huh? I said, Facade, this, Facade. I was like, which one? And I looked at it, right? And the spelling was actually Facade. It's actually the Facade. But he pronounced it as Facade. And it's so difficult not to laugh because it's your boss. And if you laugh, obviously, you get into a lot of trouble. So that was actually one of the classic ones that I'll forever remember. It's actually pronounced as Facade. I nearly pronounced Facade, right? So he pronounced it as Facade. It's actually Facade. That's number one. Number two, there's so many departments in a hotel. And the head of the kitchen department is actually called a chef. And I always hear people say that, I have spoken to the chef. I have spoken to the chef. It's actually not chef. It's actually called chef, right? And I think I understand why, because the spelling starts with a C, but the pronunciation starts with an S. So that causes a bit of confusion. So I'm sure some of you can really relate to this, right? A lot of people say, I've spoken to the chef. 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 It's not chef, it's chef. And of course, with chef, when you deal with banqueting, you deal with events. When you have a meeting package, a typical hotel meeting package will consist of 2 coffee breaks and 1 lunch. And each coffee break will consist of 3 items. And I remember one of my colleagues back when I was working in a hotel, and we used to have this thing called BEO meeting. BEO meeting stands for Booking Event Order Meeting, where we'll run through the entire details of the event for tomorrow. I joined in for the first time, and I sat there and she was trying to teach me, okay, this is how you do it. You read the booking event orders. You start with the date, event time, who's the organizer, company details, etc. And meeting starts what time, and the coffee break starts what time. And after that, she said, so the coffee break has 3 snakes. I was like, oh, the coffee break has 3 snakes? And I looked at the BO. I was like, oh, it wasn't a jungle theme or it wasn't anything. Why did she say snakes? And then she said, the afternoon, we have another 3 more snakes. So I understood that she meant snacks. And I noticed this very commonly, that a lot of people make this mistake between snacks and snake. So in the hotel, even salespeople, when they sell, they tend to sell my meeting packages. My meeting package has 2 coffee break and 1 lunch. Each coffee break, you can choose among this selection of snacks, right? So it was obviously not snakes, it's snack. So after when COVID happened, everyone literally moved online. And when they moved online, the most common tool used to communicate online back then was called Skype. And obviously Skype was popular, and in a while, it was not so popular already. And there's this new company that came. I think some of you might know this company. And this company's spelling is ZOOM. And I used to hear a lot of my colleagues say that, Adrian, later we're going to Zoom. I said, what? Yeah, later we're going to Zoom. I'm meeting on Zoom, okay? What time are we meeting on Zoom? It's actually not Zoom. It's actually called Zoom. Z with a Z, right? That's another common thing that people mispronounce. The next word I'd like to share is actually about this word called session and section. There's always a misuse of these 2 words. Session is a period of time where it is time related. Section is a part, it's a particular section. So I think people confuse themselves between session and section, and they kind of crisscross using those words. The other word is, this is a classic, right? So recently we're having a conversation with one of our colleagues, and she was talking, and then suddenly she said, I think she wanted to go to this place called Straits Quay. And then I think the rest of them went to correct her. It's actually not Straits Quay. It's actually pronounced as Straits Quay, right? Quay is pronounced as key. And honestly, when you think about this, right, I tend to ask this question, why was English done that way? They put a Q, but it's pronounced totally different. I'll give you one example about this. There's a word called knife, pronounced as knife, but the spelling is Knife. Knife, but it's just pronounced as knife. English is a very funny language. This is another one. One day I heard someone saying that, today I've got to go and prepare my Mise en place. It's not Mise en place, it's actually maison place, right? So she pronounces it as Mise en place. So the next word that we commonly hear mispronounced is actually called archive. The word archive, we hear people pronounce as achieve. I will achieve my Instagram post. So it's actually archive. The next word is actually called jacuzzi. Some people pronounce it as jacuzzi. It's actually not jacuzzi, not with a G, but with a Z, so it's jacuzzi. And last but not least, this is actually the classic one. When the guest checks in, you always hear this conversation where the front office, right, maybe let's say there's a major complaint, guest is not happy, and the guest probably requests for a free breakfast or an upgrade. And then you probably hear this conversation. I'm so sorry and I apologize for this unpleasant experience. Because of this, we would like to upgrade your room to a suite. I remember hearing this for the first time. I was like, suite? This is a suite, right? And I think the guest paused for a moment. What do you mean by suite? Oh, we've got a very nice suite, a level 17, that is extremely premium. What the person meant is actually suite. S-U-I-T-E is pronounced as sweet, right? So that's a common mistakes made by hoteliers. So hopefully this helps make some of you realize how these words are actually pronounced. So why is it important to know how to pronounce each of these words? Because when you pronounce it differently, it carries a total different meaning, and that's where miscommunication happens. 2, I think sometimes when people correct your pronunciation, and hopefully if there are friends who hear, or if you hear your friends mispronouncing it, or your colleagues mispronouncing it, I think it's a good thing if you can tell them that it's actually not pronounced this way, because the person may not know how to pronounce it. And as a friend or as a colleague, I think it's important to actually share with them the correct way of how to pronounce it, so that they don't embarrass themselves in the lobby or when speaking to customers or communicating to someone important. And because this reflects the entire brand and experience of the hotel. So it's actually very important to actually correct that. And that's it for this week. If you like what you've heard, please remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next episode. Thank you.